What is up, fight fans, and welcome to MMA Weekly's live coverage of UFC 258. It's the pre-fight show right now with Gries and Cain. I'm Jim Grieshaber along with my buddy Jeff Cain, and our show, of course, powered by Official CBD Emporium. That's the IG handle. CBD Emporium featuring Level Select CBD. Guys, if you want to stay young, feeling vibrant, feeling active, feeling great every single day, be on your best, be at your best, pain-free, sleeping better, you know the deal by now. StayInTheFightMMA.com is the website. StayInTheFightMMA.com. The code is MMA50 for 50% off Level Select and CBD Emporium CBD products right there at CBD Emporium. Level Select CBD. Stay in the fight. And we got a big fight this weekend, Jeff Cain, and I'm very excited for Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns. It's been a long time coming. This fight has been taking the circuitous route to get here. It was supposed to be last summer when Usman fought Jorge Masvidal on short notice on Fight Island after Gilbert Burns tested positive for COVID. And here we are finally in February of 2021 with Kamaru Usman going to defend the welterweight strap against his former teammate and number one contender, Gilbert Burns. Can't wait for this one, man.
No, I can't wait for it either, man. Title fights, right? Champions defending their belts, putting their belts on the line. That's good to see this year. Yeah, man, this fight's been a long time in the making. A lot of side stories, former training partners. Burns says that he knows he can can submit Kamaru, which means that happened in training. And then Kamaru says that they both know who's going to win from what happened in training. Nice build up to this fight.
Yeah, without a doubt. And when you think about these two guys, former teammates, Jeff, obviously, as we talked about at Sanford MMA, Usman now is with Trevor Whitman and Justin Gaethje and company in Colorado. But they know each other very well. They trained together for a long time. And as you said, that means it happened in training when he says he knows he can submit him. And happening in training is a lot different than happening in the octagon, as we know. But with that confidence, with Burns coming in, knowing that he's gotten the best of Usman in the past, that definitely helps him. But when I look at this fight, the first thing that jumps out to me is how great Kamaru Usman is. I mean, his winning streak right now is at, 15 in a row? 16 in a row? One of the two. Yep, and he's undefeated in the UFC. His last loss, by the way, shout out to my boy Jose Caceres, Alex Caceres' brother. I called one of his fights in Miami last year, actually in Pembroke Pines, against Mike the Don Lombardo. But Jose Caceres, the last one to beat Usman, and that is a long, long time ago. But Kamaru's win streak, Jeff, and this is where I give him the edge over Burns, at least coming into this fight, for this reason. Look at the names he has beaten in a row. And you want to talk about Damian Maia, that's one thing. But after the Maia fight, Rafael dos Anjos, Tyron Woodley, two former champions, Colby Covington, the number one contender, and Jorge Masvidal, the BMF. That is a literal murderer's row, murdered by Kamaru Usman. He has earned the right to be called the champion of the world at 170.
Oh, 100%. I mean, 16-fight win streak. And like you said, you just reeled off the names of his most recent fights. And then Burns also has a win over Woodley and Maia. And then he has also a win over Gunnar Nelson, who at the time was pretty hot in the division. So I think that this is a comparable fight. Their records are comparable all outside of Usman's winning streak. This is an interesting fight, man. This is an interesting fight.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, this is something, too, when you look at it. I mean, Usman is plus 220 to win via KO, TKO, or DQ, and Usman via submission is plus 1,400. Burns via TKO, KO, plus 800. Burns via submission, plus 550. What that tells you, Jeff, is that people think, the odds makers in particular, think that this fight is going to go the distance and it's going to be a decision for whoever wins. And that's interesting, too. Kamaru Usman is the favorite in this fight overall, the betting line for him, but this one's going to be close, man, and a lot of people think it's going the distance.
Yeah, they have a tendency, particularly Usman lately, has a tendency of going the distance. It could just be facing better competition. It could be that he's fighting smarter, not taking damage. Who knows, man, what it means. But he hasn't been finishing the fights that he at the same rate that he was earlier in his career. And Burns goes to a decision a lot. Both these guys have wrestling backgrounds. This fight has decision written all over it. I just hope it's a unanimous decision and a clear-cut winner, man, because I hate leaving it to the judges.
Yeah, no doubt. And with these guys, and look, it's something that if it's close, Usman has proven before that he's gone the distance with Colby Covington. That fight didn't go all the way. It almost did. And whatever you want to say about the fake eye poke, and I say it every time because it was fake, but he did rally and he did come back multiple times in that fight from being rocked by Colby and was able to get the finish late, whether Covington agreed with it or not. Most people did. and he just outlasted a savage in Colby Covington. He absolutely beat down Tyron Woodley. In fact, both these guys did, and people give Woodley a lot of crap because he's on a losing streak and he doesn't look like the Woodley of old. But when you lose to Usman, Burns, and Covington, that three-headed monster at the top of welterweight is unbelievable. Masvidal at 4, not chopped liver by any means, obviously, but that top 4 is as good as you're going to see in any division in the UFC, and I'm just excited to get that division going again, Jeff. I'm excited to get welterweight moving again because it's been stagnant for a while at the top.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the COVID environment is part of the reason why we haven't seen this division, more progress over the last year. But we're back now. The fight that was originally supposed to happen last year is going to finally happen. A real number 1 contender against the champion. No short notice, no excuses. This is going to go down on Saturday.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Really excited for Usman versus Burns. And, it's not the only fight on the card, but it's the big one, obviously. And, this fight card does not have a big-time co-main event, right now, and that's no disrespect to Macy Barber and Alexa Grasso. Obviously, that one's a big fight. At flyweight in the women's division, Macy Barber looking to get back on track after the injury. A very tough year for her. She suffered her first loss and got seriously injured in a fight last year. And then Alexa Grasso, Alexa Grasso is definitely, she got back to her winning ways in August of last year after some losses, and when you look at Macy Barber, just sky's the limit for her. When you think about her abilities, she was 8-0 before Roxanne Modafferi got a hold of her in January of last year, and she also, in that fight, suffered a major knee injury.
Yeah, it was a good fight. I actually watched that fight last night or the night before. And Macy got dropped at the start of the second round by Roxanne. Roxanne's boxing looked incredible in that fight, better than it had been in a long time. But Macy reversed her on the ground because Roxanne is a very accomplished grappler. That's where she's the most dangerous. And on the ground, Macy didn't have that big of issues with her, and then she injured her knee during the fight and was unable to mount anything after that. She was just hanging on to get to the end of the fight. Took her first loss. Not a bad loss, man. You suffered an injury, and it is Roxanne. She's a veteran, a pioneer in the sport. And then Grasso is a tough fighter, but since arriving in the UFC, she hasn't been able to put together like back-to-back win streaks. It's a win one, lose one, win one, lose one, win one, lose one. And so she's just trying to find some traction here. And she's getting Barber off of an injury and sort of a longer layoff. This is a good timing for Grasso, but I feel like this fight is Macy's to lose.
It's going to be a tough one. We're excited about it, no doubt about it. And, speaking of being excited, I always get excited when I see my friends get in there and fight. And a couple of guys who I've known on the way up, Phil Rowe, the Fresh Prince, a Contender Series guy, is on this card. More on him in a few minutes. But Kelvin Gastelum, right there with Israel Adesanya in the interim title fight. It wasn't that long ago, Jeff. It really wasn't for KG. But it seems like an eternity because he's a guy who was at the top of the division, speaking of middleweight, not that long ago. But 3 consecutive losses to Adesanya, and then right after that, a few months later, to Darren Till, and then Jack Hermanson subbed him in the first round last year. So KG coming off 3 straight losses. He had 1-2 in a row over Bisping and Jacare to get to that point to have the interim fight against Adesanya. Goes to war with Izzy for 5 rounds, and Adesanya is able to get the unanimous decision win. Darren Till, KG did not look good in that fight in November of 2019. And then July of last year, subbed in the first round at 118 by the Joker, Jack Hermanson. So this fight, more than any fight in a long time, is crucial for Kelvin Gastelum. He's got Ian Heinisch coming up, and this for Heinisch is a big-name fight. Like, he doesn't really have a win over a big-name fighter, and he lost to Derek Brunson, who is the biggest name he's fought so far. So a huge opportunity for Heinisch, and vindication right there for Kelvin Gastelum, obviously, who cannot afford another loss if he's to keep going in the direction of the title at 185.
Yeah, and with 3 losses in a row, Kelvin could really be fighting for his job on Saturday. Nobody in the UFC can afford to lose four fights. I don't care who you are. Not Conor McGregor can't afford to lose 4 fights in a row. And so Kelvin's facing a tough situation here. Good news is his opponent was on a 2-fight losing streak until his last fight. And so I feel like Kelvin, this is a good fight to get back in the win column and get back on track, because we've talked about Kelvin a lot over the last couple of weeks. I feel like Kelvin is just trying to work through that disappointment of making it to the top and it not working out and losing those big fights. And so now he has to go back to the drawing board, get a win over somebody on Saturday, and then start building himself back up. But I feel like Kelvin hasn't been himself in a few fights.
Yeah, he hasn't. I mean, that Adesanya fight was a war, and we've talked about those kinds of fights and the effect they can have on people's careers. Kelvin's told me multiple times that's not the case with him. Darren Till was a bad matchup for Kelvin. You know, Darren Till coming up from welterweight, but long and lanky and a great striker, and kept Kelvin at distance all night long, and KG didn't look good. And then anyone can get subbed on any given night and any given time, and that happened to him against Jack Hermanson. So that's an interesting one. Meanwhile, Jeff, the rest of the main card is a little bit interesting right now when you think about this, because I am really, man, I'm telling you what, right now, first of all, Bobby Green collapsed backstage, and as of now, we see that the fight against Jim Miller is still on, but Jimmy Rivera and Pedro Munoz were supposed to be on this fight, and that got pushed back to the Rosenstruik and Cyril Gahn card later this month because of a positive COVID test in one of the two camps. So this card losing a little bit of firepower the week of the fight, and as of now, Bobby Green and Jim Miller looks like a go.
Yeah, but Jim Miller's got to be confident about that. I mean, Bobby Green collapsed backstage, which means he had a terrible weight cut, right? I mean, he pushed it too far, collapsed backstage, and they did not have a face-off. I mean, that's how it was. You know, he weighed in, went backstage, collapsed, and they didn't even get to have a face-off. The bout was, in my mind, was in jeopardy. It looks like it's still going on. But we'll see how Bobby Green recovers from that, because that's hard to recover from. I mean, you know, he's going to fight tomorrow after collapsing today. Hopefully it works out for him. But Jim Miller's got to be happy to hear that, man. I mean, I guess if you're happy to hear your opponent, something like that happens to your opponent. But Jim Miller's got to feel a little bit more confident today than he maybe did yesterday when Bobby Green collapsed backstage. Although I still say Bobby Green's going to take that fight.
Well, and then you think about it, too. I mean, you want to make sure you get that paycheck, and your opponent is a big part of that. So that's something that we're looking forward to. And this fight card's been a little bit, I don't want to say cursed from the beginning, but kind of, you know, got some good fights on there. Ricky Simon and Brian Kelleher. I mean, that one's buried on the early prelims, and that's a really good fight right there. You got Bilal Muhammad, the bully, and Diego Lima. That one's been scheduled a couple times, and they're going to get in there. There's some good fights on this card, Jeff, but the co-main was originally, and we think it was going to be the co-main. They hadn't officially announced it as the co-main, but the Battle of New York, Long Island, Chris Weidman, Queens or Brooklyn, I can't remember which one, Uriah Hall, but Weidman and Hall was expected to be on this card. That one dropped off because Weidman tested positive for COVID, and that would have been, we think, the co-main on this one. Instead, now it's Macy Barber and Alexa Grasso. A little bit surprised that Kelvin Gastelum's fight is not the co-main. They actually featured him a lot more on the embedded shows than they did the girls who are in the co-main. So a nice spot and a golden opportunity for Macy Barber and Alexa Grasso to make that walk right before Kamaru and Burns.
Yeah, I think it's because of the losses with Kelvin, the 3 losses in a row, and then they're kind of, Macy has a lot of hype behind her, even with the loss. She made it through the UFC, through the Dana White Contender Series, and you know she's got a little bit of a following. She's got a little bit of spark behind her, and I think that's what it is. They're just putting her as the co-main event. She wasn't going to be the co-main event, like you said. It was going to be Chris Weidman, and then that fight got canceled because of COVID. And she got pushed up to the main card because I feel like she has a little bit of name value. That's what it comes down to. She's got a little bit of name value, and the UFC obviously thinks that she's got a bright future ahead of her.
Yeah, no doubt, and it's a big-time push, and we're excited to see how Macy looks after the injury. I mean, that's a tough one for her. She definitely, you know, has not faced any type of adversity like that in her career, was undefeated going into that fight against Roxanne, and you know, just rehabbing and recovering for about a year. And that's a long time. That's what it takes to get back in there. So Alexa Grasso, by no means, though, I mean, she's a very tough opponent to get back in there against after some time on the shelf with the injury. And again, Macy Barber, as a high-level prospect, as someone who had never tasted defeat before and never knowing what to expect, a girl like Roxanne was going to teach her a thing or two anyway in that fight. Let's be honest. Veteran, been around a long time. But coming off a loss, how will she respond? Sometimes it might be better for a young fighter who had never experienced a loss before to have more time off, albeit you never want to have it because of an injury.
I agree. I don't think that we can't determine yet whether it was a bad loss. Look, Roxanne's a tough out. She's been in there with everybody. She's been in so many different promotions and fought in big fights. And you're not going to show Roxanne anything she hasn't seen. And she's a tough out. You know, she's a tough out. She's a really tough fighter. And so I felt like that was probably a really good learning loss for Macy. And then Macy says tearing her ACL or having the knee injury has made her meaner. Jim. And so the time
Wow.
off and all the rehab and everything. So it's going to be interesting to see how she bounces back, because that's the big thing, right? I mean, when you're undefeated and you suffer your first loss, it's mental after that. How is she going to respond mentally to that? Is she going to go out here and make mistakes trying to prove something, trying to get that loss back? Or is she going to go out here and fight her fight? But Grasso, like you said, she's a tough opponent. I mean, she's been in there with a lot of people. She's been in there with Carla Esparza, Tatiana Suarez, Felice Herrig, Randa Marcos. She's been in there with Carolina. She's been in. That's why she has the losses that she has. Is because she's been in there with the top of that division. Macy Barber has not. So while the records might look, oh, Barber was on this big win streak and Grasso hasn't been able to put together a win streak in the UFC, I wouldn't look at it like that. I feel like Grasso's definitely faced the tougher opponents, but we'll see if she has enough to defeat this rising star in Macy Barber.
All right, it's our MMA Weekly live UFC preview show. Actually, we're not live. UFC 258 preview, powered by Official CBD Emporium, featuring Level Select CBD. Stay in the fight with Level Select CBD. Very simple for you to do. Go to stayinthefightmma.com, stayinthefightmma.com, and enter the code MMA50 to get your CBD Emporium and Level Select CBD products at 50% off, just like we do right here on the show. Very excited to have them as partners and very excited to move into the future with great partners like them by our side. Jim Grieshaber, Jeff Cain, keeping it going for you, heading up to UFC 258. The MMA Weekly cameras will be there all week long, and they have been there all week long, and we'll bring you tomorrow night live stream during the fights and the post-fight press conference from Vegas, and that is going to be very exciting because there might be a new champion crowned at 170, but there might not be, Jeff. And we look at the odds for this fight card. Let's take a peek at those. I mean, the welterweight championship matchup, and it's set. They're both on championship weight. Everything's ready to go. Kamaru Usman minus 270, Gilbert Burns plus 210. If you like to, roll the dice a little bit and go for a dog and win a little bit of money, Burns is a pretty good bet here. He knows him very well. He knows his tendencies. They've trained together a million times. Burns is terrific on the ground, a jiu-jitsu world champion. Usman, the wrestling is phenomenal. Both of them are very good strikers, with Usman now having trained with Henry Hoof, going to Trevor Whitman to get a little bit. And sometimes, and Henry Hoof is not going to be in Gilbert Burns' corner for this one because obviously he's got a conflict with the two guys he's worked with, and not a conflict with them, but a conflict of interest because he's worked with both. Let's clarify that. But, Jeff, when I think about some of the fighters and what they've told me over the years and what we've seen, when you're already great at something, and Usman's a great striker, he's become a great striker, you go to a new coach, and Whitman's one of the best in the game, so is Henry Hoof, but one of the best in the game, you learn new variances, you learn new techniques, you might pick up a thing or two, and those are a thing or two that Burns probably hasn't seen before. So that unique change in environment and how it affects Kamaru's striking is, I think, a pretty big storyline in this fight, because I think he has learned some new things from Whitman, and I think that they're going to really help him in this fight.
I agree. While they are former training partners, they're not the same fighters that they were in the gym. And as you pointed out, the training in the gym is not a fight. You put yourself in bad places in the gym. That's the whole point. And so, yes, of course, you're going to get submitted and caught every now and then. You put yourself in a bad spot on purpose a lot of times, just to get the feel of it. So I don't know. I'm not saying that's what happened. Burns might have just come out there and submitted him, right? I'm not sure how that happened. They usually keep that stuff behind closed doors, but when building a fight, that stuff comes out. But yes, I agree that Usman is not this. He's going to have a different look than what Burns is used to seeing. Like when Burns thinks about Usman in his head and all those training sessions, Usman's not that guy. And so I agree with you. And he was a high level striker before he went to Whitman, but that's any kind of change like that, right? That's the key, I think, to staying on top, is mixing it up a little bit. You always have your home gym and your home coaches, but you always got to go out there and see what's out there, right? What else is out there? What am I missing? What is somebody else doing that we're not? And then you take it or leave it, right? I expect this to be a good fight, but I don't know who's going to win it. I mean, I'm leaning towards Usman, but only because of his cardio and stuff. I think that's going to become a variable when we get to the fourth and fifth rounds. I mean, whenever he outlasted Kobe Covington, that stood out to me. And so we'll see what Burns has to offer in those late rounds. But I think this is a pick'em fight, and the odds kind of show that.
Yeah, and we've seen former teammates fight before where we didn't think the past had a whole lot of bearing on the outcome of the fight. And, Dillashaw, Cody Garbrandt a couple of times, that was something that really, stood out to me, former teammates fighting each other. And, Joseph Benavidez has done that against former teammates at Alpha Male. And, it just happens in this sport. People change locations, and there was really, that we know of, no acrimony there, no issues with Usman and the people at Sanford. It was just that he was looking to take what he was doing to an even higher level, go work with a different coach, a different team, different training partners, and I think that's good for the sport. I think it's good for the fighters. I think fighters should move around. They should work with different coaches. They should learn different things and work with different teammates. I'm not a big proponent of staying in the same gym with the same team for your whole career if you think you can get better going someplace else. And I've had this talk with Triple C Henry Cejudo before about, people who help you get to a certain level in the sport. If you feel like you need to evolve and get better, you need to make the best choice for yourself, which is what Kamaru did. And he's become tight with Justin Gaethje, so obviously there's a lot of big-time striking going on there and a lot of big-time sparring going on there. And, if you watch the shows behind the scenes, you see some of that. But, I mean, let's just be honest. Trevor Whitman is a genius. I mean, he is a great striking coach.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just getting with somebody you click with.
Yeah.
Because they're all high level. Let's get to somebody, and sometimes you don't know what you're missing out on, right? Like you think because you're used to it. You're in their gym and you got your training partners that you train with every day and your coaches, and then you leave to go somewhere else for just like 6 weeks or whatever, right? Just to get a feel. And then you realize that, man, I like this gym a lot better. I like the people better. The atmosphere is better. This fits me better. I'm happier. I'm more comfortable. And you make the change. I think that Usman made a good change. And I agree with what Cejudo says. You should always be changing stuff around. Dillashaw kind of went through that with leaving Alpha Male, and he got all the flack for that. Dude, he was just trying to become a better fighter. That's all he was trying to do. I don't think there needs to be any animosity when a fighter leaves a gym. They're just trying to better themselves, and maybe they'll come back and better you along the way.
Yeah, and interesting, too, when you think about, the things that happen in this sport and fighters coming up through the ranks getting better. The big change for Gilbert Burns to get him to this point was weight class, right? He was down at 55, and he lost to Dan Hooker and had trouble making weight, and he comes up to welterweight, and look at what he's done. I mean, this is where he's made the title run, and he's looked really good there. So for him, it was a change in weight class, not a change in scenery, but a change in weight class. We've seen it before with several fighters. That can be the key or the springboard to them, heading in the right direction, and that's definitely something that's been the case with him.
Yeah, and he went up in weight class, because I think that's key. I think that you see people have the most success when they go up in weight class. I feel like when you see people go down in weight class, it's kind of they're at the point of their career where they're trying to like maybe extend it a little bit, or like like Frankie Edgar keeps going down after losing the lightweight championship. He went down, couldn't get past Aldo. Now he's down. BJ Penn wasn't any good anymore at 55, or was getting beat by the top guys. It goes down. But you see other fighters who have success going up. Darren Till, Burns. You see, I think you see more success the other way. I feel like some fighters drain themselves so bad during the weight cut that we don't ever get to see them at their best. And when they go up a weight class, we're like, wow, who the hell's this person? Why haven't we seen him? And it's because he feels good in this fight. This is his weight class.
Yep, and when you're talking about Kamaru Usman, he's a guy who logs a lot of cage time, and Burns does too, and more on that in a minute. But when you're talking about Kamaru, one thing that really stands out to me, his last finish was Colby Covington, but that was still 24 minutes and 10 seconds of time in the octagon. And right after that, he goes the distance with Masvidal 5x5, Woodley before Covington 5x5, Rafael dos Anjos before that was 5x5, and then Damian Maia 5x5 before that. He has been logging a ton of octagon time. Every time in there, he's 25 minutes, and that goes all the way back. And even, when he beat Emil Weber-Meek, that was back in January of 2018, and that was 3 5-minute rounds. That one went the distance. So his last early finish in the first round was Sergio Moraes, and that was back in September of 2017. But Kamaru doesn't have a ton of fights in terms of being in there that often, but he's got a ton of octagon time in those fights.
Yeah, well, I think it's a testament to just his style. He doesn't get rattled. He doesn't get worried. He doesn't feel the urgency to finish someone in the first round. He knows he works hard. I mean, he might even overwork, I mean, the footage of him training is just crazy. They got to tell him to leave the gym. And so I feel like he knows he's going to be there in the 4th and 5th round. And there's just no reason to get all crazy early on and put yourself in a position to where you could get finished. We saw him hurt in the Covington fight a couple of times, but he immediately clinches, ties him up, gets time to recover. He fights like a veteran. He fights like a guy who has a lot more fights than what he has. I'm a fan of Usman, but he doesn't have he doesn't go out to finish you. That's just not how he approaches a fight. He goes out there to beat you. If a finish presents itself, he'll jump all over it, but he's not going to force a finish. And neither will Burns. I think this is a very interesting. I feel like this is going to be a technical fight. I hope it goes to the ground because that's what I want to see. I want to see the jiu-jitsu versus the wrestling. If it cancels itself out, or if Kamaru gets in trouble, and has to fend off a submission attempt, that's where I think this fight's most interesting. But it's probably going to take place on the feet, Jim.
Yeah, probably, and there's some elite striking there, make no mistake about it. But, Jeff, you're right, man. A Division II wrestling champion, national champion, 3-time All-American in Usman, and also a second-degree black belt in jiu-jitsu in Gilbert Burns. And, when you think about the wrestling versus the jiu-jitsu, Kamaru Usman said something really interesting in the Countdown show, and he always says interesting things. I'm a big fan of the way he conducts and carries himself, and he hasn't become that big star yet, and Burns isn't that big star yet, and I don't believe this main event is enough to carry a big pay-per-view buy. I actually think they might be in trouble when it comes to the pay-per-view buys for this one, but you should buy this fight. You should want to see two world-class fighters, and they are world-class. They are among the best we've ever seen in any weight class. But when I saw what Kamaru Usman said in the Countdown show about maybe I'm not the best striker, maybe I'm not the best wrestler, I'm not the best at jiu-jitsu, I'm not the best at Muay Thai, but I'm the best at putting them all together. And to me, that was what made a guy like Georges St-Pierre so special. The best at putting it all together is a big difference, right? You can be the greatest wrestler, you can be the best at jiu-jitsu, you can be the best striker, but putting it all together in today's climate in the UFC is key. And Usman's right. He is brilliant at putting it all together.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key to it all. Is the ability to put it all together. And you're right. Nobody put it all together like GSP did. I don't care what anybody says. In my opinion, even John Jones didn't put it all together like GSP did. I mean, GSP came into the sport as a striker, a karate guy, and then completely became the most dominant wrestler that maybe the welterweight division's ever seen until now. So, yeah, I think that Usman does a really good job of mixing it all together. And I agree with what he says. You don't have to be the best striker in the world to beat a high-level striker. You just got to be proficient enough to work the angles and get to where you want to. He's good in the clinch. He's good on the ground. He's got great takedowns. He's got dominant top control. He dishes out some pretty good damage when he is on top. And his striking is fine. I agree with what he's saying. And honestly, to be the best striker in the world, you're not going to be as good as everything around. So and we talked about that in the past, about elite strikers in boxing and K1. It's because they can spend all their time just working on striking. Mixed martial arts isn't that way. Kamaru Usman can't become the best striker in the world and be successful at mixed martial arts. He has to spread it around. He has to be good at everything. And so, but Burns is also really good at everything.
Yeah, he is. And when you look at Gilbert Burns, two things I want to run by you, Jeff. And you've been around a long time, 18-plus years with MMA Weekly, and you've seen them all, man. These guys are as good as it gets, right? But with Gilbert Burns, a couple of things concern me. One, Henry Hooft won't be in his corner. And I think you can never discount not having that guy in there, especially when he can find things and tell you things and give you advice during the fight from that standpoint of striking. So that's a big loss for him. And again, that's because Kamaru Usman was also taught by Henry Hooft and did that for years. So Henry Hooft has recused himself from this fight because of that and from the corner of Gilbert Burns. Also, the victories, the quality of opponent for Gilbert Burns is not there. Usman's used to being in these wars. He's used to fighting title fights. Burns isn't. He's used to going 5 rounds and knockdown, drag-out wars. Burns not so much. And the quality of wins for Gilbert Burns, Maia and Woodley, does not compare, even though they're both on Kamaru's list. That doesn't compare to the wins that Kamaru has when you talk about Dos Anjos and Covington and Masvidal.
Yeah, and look, the wins over Maia and Woodley right now don't hold as much weight as they used to.
Right.
I mean, and that's no disrespect to either one of those guys. Woodley, I feel like, is in his own way mentally. Man, physically, that guy's still a beast. He just can't pull the trigger. It's frustrating for me to watch Woodley fight because I know how good that he is, and I'm just sitting there going, pull the damn trigger.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is an interesting fight. Burns, he has to catch him early with a submission. You're not going to get a submission in most MMA fights after the second round because everybody's sweaty. You can't get the grip. You're not as fresh anymore. You don't have the strength. You're tired. They're tired. It just isn't going to happen. So Burns, for him to submit Usman, I think it has to happen in the first 2 rounds. And we'll see. I feel like Kamaru's going to do what he does. Usman's going to go out there and he's going to box. It's the first round. He's going to get his timing, feel you out a little bit, and see how. I don't feel like he's going to rush anything, knowing that Burns' best chance to catch him is early in that fight. And so as the fight goes on, I expect to see Kamaru put the pressure on, kind of exactly what he did with Kobe. I think it's going to be a blueprint to Kobe, except without the eye poke fake, as you like to bring up. But I think it's going to look a lot like that fight.
Yeah, and not the foot stomps like the Masvidal fight, but Kamaru revealing later that he fought that fight with a broken nose, and you're fighting an elite striker and a world-class MMA fighter in a championship fight with a broken nose. That's unbelievable for him to be able to do that, but it definitely changed his style and the way that he approached that fight going in. I love this matchup, and by all accounts, and the consensus says that, Burns is the better athlete. He's quicker. He is the 2-time jiu-jitsu or second-degree jiu-jitsu black belt and a champion. So that guy is unbelievable on the ground. This is a fight where, Kamaru usually has the advantage coming in on the ground. And the thing against Tyron Woodley that surprised me when he took the belt was that he completely negated Woodley's wrestling. And Woodley, a D1 wrestler, Usman was a D2, but he completely negated that, took that away. Woodley was hesitant to throw. Kamaru was bigger and stronger than Woodley. He's not going to be bigger and stronger than Burns, but he does have, Jeff, and this is maybe the biggest statistical advantage, or at least in terms of measurements, a 5-inch reach advantage. And for a fighter like Usman, who likes to stay outside, pick his spots, and pick you apart, that is a huge advantage going into this fight.
Yeah, and especially if he's at a speed disadvantage. And speed's something that I hadn't really considered. If Burns is faster, that could give Usman some issues. But the reach advantage is going to give him 5 inches to get caught up on the speed, so that can help him if he is indeed at a speed disadvantage. I don't know how this. Watch this fight being a complete striking match. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Watch this be a kickboxing match and end in a knockout with all this analysis on their jiu-jitsu and wrestling pedigrees. And usually that's the way it goes. I mean, let's be honest. That's the way it goes. Whenever you face somebody who's a second-degree black belt, I'm not taking them down unless I absolutely have to. And then with Usman and his top control, you probably don't want to go to the ground with Usman unless you absolutely have to. And so this is going to be an interesting fight to see how they approach it, because I feel like Burns is probably the one that needs to get it to the ground more than Usman. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's just me looking at this fight the way I look at fights and I'm completely off base. But I feel like Burns needs to get this fight to the ground more than Usman does.
Yeah, and when you're facing somebody who's such an elite jiu-jitsu practitioner, you can't slip up. You can't make a mistake because it'll end just like that. You've got to be really careful about technique and positioning, and level changes and all these things, all the things that, you might not think about as much, but with a guy like Burns, he can catch you at any moment. You just give him a little sliver of an opportunity. It's UFC 258 preview live on MMA Weekly. I keep saying live. We're not live right now. We're recording today, but it's Gries and Cain, and we're excited. We're powered by CBD Emporium featuring Level Select CBD. Get 50% off your CBD Emporium or Level Select CBD right now. Go to StayInTheFightMMA.com. StayInTheFightMMA.com. Enter the code MMA50 to get your 50% off and your hookup today from CBD Emporium featuring Level Select CBD. Level Select CBD. Stay in the fight. And both these guys will definitely be looking to do that. Jeff, meanwhile, real quick, I want to run down the rest of the odds. We have a couple other things to get to, and then we'll get out of here and get ready for tomorrow when we're streaming live right here on MMA Weekly. We'll be on YouTube. You want to make sure you hit that like button. Comment every time we throw on. Get the bell going so you know when we get you the alert when we come on. And subscribe to our channel because we bring you the best coverage in mixed martial arts for almost 20 years. But, Jeff, the rest of this fight card, the flyweight on the women's side, co-main event, Macy Barber minus 105, Alexa Grasso minus 125. So you have to bet more than you can win on each of these ladies. Kelvin Gastelum and Hines at middleweight. KG a minus 230 favorite, plus 180 for Hines. The middleweight bout between Julian Marquez and Makai Pitolo. Marquez minus 170, Pitolo plus 140. And then lightweight, Bobby Green and Jim Miller. And again, Bobby Green collapsed backstage. He's a minus 265 favorite. Jim Miller plus 205. On the prelims, Rodolfo Vieira, Anthony Hernandez. Vieira, of course, the four-time Jiu-Jitsu world champion, is minus 400, plus 300 for Hernandez. Welterweight, the bully Bilal Muhammad, minus 500. Diego Lima, plus 350. Women's strawweight, Polyana Viana, plus 120 versus Mallory Martin, minus 150. Andre Ewell, plus 115, minus 145 for Chris Gutierrez, the favorite. That's at a catchweight right there. At bantamweight, Brian Kelleher and Ricky Simon, plus 195 Kelleher, minus 250 Ricky Simon is the favorite there. And moving on, a couple more fights on this card. Gabe Green, minus 135, the favorite over Philip Rowe, the Fresh Prince, at plus 105. I called one of his fights at Rage in the Cage on the way up against a boxer named Roberto Ali Young. And then women's flyweight, Jillian Robertson, plus 110 against the favorite Miranda Maverick, minus 140. Any of those odds stand out to you? Anything you wanted to point out when you hear all those?
Those odds, a lot of those odds are close, which is a testament to the matchmaking in this and just how competitive these fights are expected to be. I was a little surprised about the Polyana Viana, how she is the underdog down there in the main card against Mallory Martin. I thought that would be the other way, but I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough about Mallory Martin. That was the one that stood out to me, and then just how close all the odds are. You know, those are there's no fight that you're going to make a ton of money on here, right? Without putting a ton of money down. And so I think that's a testament to the matchmaking. I think that this card, we've talked about this before. I think this card lacks some star power, right? And I agree with you. I think that the pay-per-view sales are going to show that. But the odds show just how closely contested these matchups are. I expect this to be a hell of a night. You know, I expect tomorrow night we're going to be going, a whole lot. But it just doesn't have the name value. But yeah, the one that stands out to me was I thought that Viana would be the favorite. I really did whenever I looked at that fight card. But I guess not.
All right, so any of the underdogs, are you picking any upsets out of all? I mean, let's look at like Kelvin. Gastelum is a big favorite. Macy Barber and Grasso are neither one of them's plus odds. And then Kamaru and Burns. Kamaru is obviously the favorite. But any big upsets in your mind that you're picking?
Yeah, the only upset that I'm looking at right now, and it's based on what happened backstage, is Jim Miller and Bobby Green, man. I mean, Jim Miller, there might be a little bit of money to be made, because if Bobby Green doesn't recover like he does in his past fights, Jim Miller might steal one here. You know, and those, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm putting too much stock in Bobby Green kind of collapsing, but he collapsed, and it's from dehydration. I've been dehydrated before. You usually feel like crap for days, you know, so I expect Bobby Green to feel like crap tomorrow night, no matter how good he looks or how bad he looks. Jim Miller might be the live dog on that main card, particularly.
Yeah, and Miller, of course, 37 years old, been around a long time. Really excited for this fight. You know, I'm going to go with Gastelum. I'm going to go with Macy Barber, and I'm going to go... Man, I got, you know what? The athleticism, the quickness, the speed, the ground game. I actually think we're going to see a new champion. I'm going to go Gilbert Burns in this one. I think he's going to submit Usman probably round 3, maybe round 4.
Ooh, that's a bold pick. I like it, Jim. Yeah, I'm going with Gastelum to win. I feel like that's his fight to lose. I'm going with Macy Barber barely. I think that fight's going to be a lot closer than maybe some people think. Grasso's experienced, man. She's been in there with some really high-level people that Macy hasn't been in there with. I feel like Macy should win that fight, but I think it's going to be a bigger war than maybe some people are thinking. And then I'm picking Bobby Green, even though I just said all that.
Even though he collapsed and all. Okay. So, Jeff, let me ask you this, man. We got a few minutes left in this fight card. You want to transition a little bit and talk about some of the shit that's going on, because my head's spinning. I'm trying to figure out this lightweight division, and Dana's not helping us any. Now, I want to throw a couple things at you. Jeff Cain, Jim Grieshaber, MMA Weekly, right here, talking about UFC 258. But the news coming out of Vegas this week has been intriguing, to say the least. Number one, and this is just a quick one for you, but Khamzat Chimaev is out of his fight against Leon Edwards, and that one's been postponed again, so we're not going to see. He's still experiencing some stuff to do with COVID. Dana also said, and Jeff, I want to get to this first, and then the lightweight division. John Jones will be the opponent of the winner between Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou, who, if you saw Francis's interview on Joe Rogan, I mean, good Lord, the guy, how can you not pull for him? But Francis and Stipe coming up the end of March, the winner will be greeted by John Bones Jones in Bones' heavyweight debut. He'll get the winner of that title fight. And we talked about this a lot, so neither one of us are surprised. Neither one of us think that it's a bad move. We don't think that Jones cutting the line is a bad thing because no one's really stood out in that division when you talk about Blades and Lewis and Volkov and all those guys at the top. You know, I mean, look, it's just Rosenstruik's fighting Gane. No one really has that claim, and no one has that name like Bones Jones coming up. Were you surprised at all when you heard that announcement from Dana?
No, I mean, we knew that, man. Look, John Jones is the GOAT. He's the GOAT. He doesn't have to wait in line to get a title shot when he jumps up the division. In fact, it'd be crazy for them to give him a fight and give him the possibility of losing before he got a title fight. You got to throw him right in there. And, you know, some people might complain about him jumping in line. When GSP was atop of the welterweight division, nobody was complaining that they were talking about putting him in there with Anderson Silva. And no lead up to that at all. That's just the GOAT and the GOAT, right? And so I feel like that's the way it is with John Jones. John Jones doesn't need to be in line. I was not surprised by it. In fact, I'm excited by it. It's going to happen this year, barring injuries to Stipe or Francis. So it looks like a late summer, fall showdown. John Jones debut in the heavyweight division for the title. I like it, Jim.
Man, it could be. Hopefully, if fans can come back by then, it could even be at International Fight Week in July, or maybe they push it back a month. It could be the headlining fight there, but I'm really excited about that. Meanwhile, Jeff, I don't know what in the hell is going on in the lightweight division. I have a theory, and I have a strong theory right now, and that theory is that Khabib Nurmagomedov is not done yet, and Dana White is holding on to every little sliver of hope that it feels like Dana's kind of holding his leg as Khabib's trying to walk out right now, but smart, I guess, on Dana White's part. But to say that the trilogy fight is what he's working on between Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, talking about doing that in May, but not for the title, which means Khabib is, as you said to me before the show today, holding up the lightweight division. But I want to add one little caveat that I don't think anybody's thinking about here. Dana also said that GSP training has no bearing on whether or not GSP is coming back because he always likes to stay in shape. And Dana made it a point to say that. So when Dana says that he's not working on Khabib versus GSP, but then he says McGregor and Poirier won't be for the belt, and he's having dinner with Khabib again coming up here, maybe we are going to see Khabib GSP for the 155 belt. That is the only explanation I can think of right now.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, Dana's probably holding out because we're going to do Poirier and McGregor 3. And if Conor wins that, then that sets up the biggest fight that the UFC can put together. And so Dana might just be holding out for that. I agree with Dana about GSP. I follow GSP on social media. GSP works out every day.
All the time.
He posts videos of it, you know, highly motivated individual, George St. Pierre, and he works out every day and he puts videos up. You can follow him and get in shape. So I don't put any stock in that. Like, I don't know if GSP is going to come back. I don't think that we can read that, you know, and GSP, it took so long. He does look lean. He looks a little gray too.
55-ish lean, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, he might be. But that is a fight that could interest Khabib. And so if you are going to have this all in limbo and do a lightweight tournament like they're saying, maybe you do GSP and Khabib, or you just set Khabib out for the year, you know, and you let all these bouts play out, the Gaethje and Chandler and Poirier and McGregor 3, and then throw the winners of that in, and then they get Khabib. I'm not sure what the hell's going on in the lightweight division, man. I expected Khabib to be stripped by now. He's not, and that tells you something.
You don't strip a guy when you want him to come back, right? You don't want to piss him off, so there's that. You don't strip him if you want him to come back. 2, Khabib has said neither McGregor nor Poirier impressed him in that fight at all, and he's beaten both of them easily. And I wouldn't say it was so easy against Dustin because Dustin actually had that choke locked in on him and almost came close, in my opinion, to finishing Khabib. But when I look at what Khabib has done, and he's beaten both these guys, he wants to fight GSP. So maybe this is a line in the sand for Khabib. I'm only fighting GSP, Dana. Dana, I'm only fighting GSP. Dana, well, just let Khabib, or just let Dustin and Conor fight again, and we'll see. Dana, I'm only fighting GSP. Well, just let those guys go again, and we'll see. Dana has not given up hope and will not give up hope that McGregor will fight Khabib again. And for this fight to be, and it's what a slap in the face to Dustin Poirier to have this fight be for no belt after what he's just done. I mean, that, to me, if I'm Poirier, I'm not taking that one so good.
Well, and we've talked about it before. I felt like the UFC messed up by not making Poirier and McGregor 2 for the belt.
Or at least the interim belt. Then you don't have to strip Khabib.
Exactly. And so now you can't. Conor just lost and lost in dramatic fashion to Poirier. You can't put the belt on the line for Conor right now. It makes no sense. It's going to make everybody go crazy in the division. Chandler's going nuts. Poirier's going crazy. Gaethje's livid about it. And so I think that's off the table. Dana threw that out there and then pulled it back. Okay, I saw your reactions. Don't like that. I think that you might be right. I think Khabib is probably not going to defend his lightweight belt unless it's against George St. Pierre. And then if he fights George St. Pierre, it might not even be in the lightweight division. But Dana's kind of hanging on to that, hey, let this play out. Let this play out,
Let this play out.
Yeah, maybe Chandler. Maybe you'll get a new opponent in Chandler. That's interesting, right, Khabib? Maybe Oliveira wins a couple of fights, and that's who it is. Maybe, Conor beats Dustin, and we get that fight. I feel like Dana's just throwing stuff at Khabib, trying to see what sticks. And the one thing that does stick with Khabib is GSP. And GSP, why not take that fight? Really, why not? It's a huge payday. You're retired. If you lose, who cares? Nobody expects you to win that fight at this point in your career.
If you win, you're a 3-division champ. And the only one ever.
If you win, then you and John Jones need to go out for dinner and argue over who's the GOAT. Who's the GOAT? You just won 3 belts. And I don't know how you argue that, right? John Jones could say what he wants to say. GSP says, I cleared out my division a couple of times too. Also won the middleweight championship. And oh yeah, by the way, won the lightweight championship. I don't know, man.
Beating an undefeated Khabib to do it. And that's interesting, too, when you think about it, Jeff. Dana's got to let this play out. He's making every move he's making is the right move. He's letting it play out. McGregor's next fight can't be for the belt. I wouldn't be happy about it if I'm Poirier because I would want Conor to fight someone else and then fight me for the belt. Khabib has earned the right to take his time, even though he's holding up the division. But we've seen other fighters, quote unquote, hold up the division and get stripped a lot sooner. When Cejudo left, you said it. Cejudo left, he got, boom, that belt was gone right before he left the building that night. He probably didn't even get to take it with him. But it's different now when it's the golden boy Khabib because Dana wants Conor Khabib or Khabib versus Conor too. And Khabib wants no part of that. But this is fascinating to see how it's all playing out. And the other thing that happened in this division this week is Charles Oliveira said, no thank you, homie, to Nate Diaz. When Diaz called him out and said, I want to fight him. Oliveira is now holding out for a title fight or at least the very top of that division. So maybe they can find him an opponent in a top contenders matchup on that McGregor-Poirier card, make it the co-main, or make what I've been saying all along, and you love it too, Gaethje versus Chandler, the co-main event there.
See, if I'm Charles Oliveira, because I don't think, first of all, I'm not fighting Nate Diaz. You get nowhere. Charles is knocking on the door, right? There's no reason.
A lot of money.
A lot of money, but you're also going to get a lot of money for, well, probably not as much. But yeah, there's that. Good point, Jim. There is a lot of money that he can make. But as far as getting to the title, I'm waiting. I'm staying in shape. I'm staying in shape in case Poirier or Conor gets injured, and I'm saying, hey, here I am. I'm staying in shape in case Gaethje or Chandler get injured or get COVID in that fight. And I'm saying, hey, here I am. And a win over any of those 4 puts him right there. Puts him right in the talks of the title. And so if I'm Oliveira, I'm just staying back and I'm only fighting those guys, the guys in front of me. I'm not fighting anybody behind me, not fighting anybody who's not in the division. I'm fighting the top 4 guys, or I want Khabib. Because I put Khabib by himself. I'm talking about the 4 between Poirier, McGregor, Chandler, and Gaethje. Khabib's in an island of himself.
I'm going to make a prediction now. I said I want to see Gaethje and Chandler. I think we're going to see Chandler and Oliveira as the co-main on this card. And the reason being, if you want to build Oliveira's name and give him that name credibility and that ability to sell and make you money in a title fight, there's no better way to do it than to put him on a Conor card because Gaethje fought Khabib. He's got the big, huge name. He's been around a long time. Chandler's been a Bellator champ. He just had the co-main slot on Conor Poirier. If you want to build Oliveira's name, think back to when I said this today, right now, the day before UFC 258. They have to build Oliveira's name, Jeff, and there's no better way to do it.
I agree. That's well, you got to put him in one of those fights. Oliveira would be like, yeah, I'll fight Conor because that's the best way to build his name.
Oh, yeah.
Conor
ain't taking that one right now. There's no chance.
I think
Not
it's
right
a bad
now.
matchup. Yeah, I think it's a bad matchup for Connor as well. With the reach and what Oliveira brings to the table. Yeah, that's not a fight Connor's taking right now in his career. Yeah, I think Oliveira just needs to stay in shape because the way this year has gone, and we're not past COVID yet, we're going to see fights fall apart, and we're going to see them fall apart at the last minute. And as
Yep.
long as you're in shape, and Oliveira's got the name and ranking to step right into either one of those fights. And so that's what I would do if I were him. I'm not taking a fight with anybody. Maybe an RDA, maybe, just to stay active. But right now, I think the Oliveira should only be focused on the top 5 in the division, including the champ. And Khabib needs to, when he has this meeting with Dana, he needs to come out and say whether or not he's going to defend his lightweight belt. And if he's not, then let's do a tournament. Let's do an actual tournament and put the belt at the end of it. And the winner of the tournament gets the belt. Let's just do it that way. Because we kind of messed up the way we did it before.
I don't think he'll ever do that, Jeff. I don't think Dana, he'll look at it as we're the UFC and we're not doing it the way other promotions do it.
Yeah, but they started with tournaments. I mean, UFC 1, 2, 3.
But not since he's been there.
No, they haven't had a tournament since they've been there. But people like tournaments, man. I like tournaments. That's why we like Pride. That's why we liked Pride. The most iconic events in the history of mixed martial arts have been tournaments. So I'm not opposed to it. I don't like single night tournaments. I'll say that. I don't think I prefer the way Bellator does it.
Bellator's got a good one coming up, light heavyweight with Bader and Rumble and Yoel and Machida. And who are the other 2 guys? There's 6 former UFC fighters out of the 8 in that tournament.
Yeah, like I said, I like Pride's tournament format. Wasn't
Phil
right.
Davis.
It was cool.
Yep.
It was cool. But I mean, if you had a tough first round matchup, and then it's not going to work out. And that was the problem with the early UFCs as well. You had people falling out because they couldn't fight that second time that night. So I like the way Bellator does the tournaments. If you're going to do a tournament, that's the way it should be. It's the way Strikeforce did it too. So I don't want to give Bellator all that credit. Strikeforce was doing that. And
Corey Anderson, by the way, is the other one. I just thought of it. Corey Anderson.
I was running through my head of who was cut, who left, because I knew who it was, but I couldn't.
Yoel's at 205, making his debut there. Rumble's coming back in that tournament. You got Bader, who's been a 2-division champ in Bellator. Machida, who fights Bader in the opening round. Rumble fights Yoel in the opening round. Corey Anderson, who was making a title run until Blachowicz knocked him out last year, a year ago this week in Albuquerque, and he's in there. Phil Davis, who's had title fights. So that's a pretty good tournament. And Dana, of course, would tell you that it's UFC scraps and fighters that he didn't want anymore, but it's still a pretty good tournament for Bellator. I'm with you with the UFC. I would love to see a tournament, but I do at least want to see Chandler Oliveira or Gaethje Oliveira or Gaethje Chandler on that fight card. But I think you have to, and I think Dana White's way smarter than I am when it comes to this. I know he is way smarter than I am when it comes to this. But you've got to put Oliveira in that co-main. You have to build his name on the Conor McGregor-Poirier trilogy fight to put him in position to be bankable for a title fight. You're welcome. They probably already thought of this. But just in case they didn't, I'm here to tell them.
He needs to be on that card. He needs to be on the main card for sure, because if they do it, because instead of doing tournaments, what the UFC likes to do is kind of what they did with the Conor and Poirier thing, right? The co-main event, there are lightweights they feature on that card. And so they could do that to where they feature all these fights on the same card. And it ends up being a tournament kind of format anyway, but not really an official tournament. And so that's the way the UFC sort of does it. Is they put the people that they want to kind of build the next matchup as the co-main or on the main card of those fights. And I feel like that's what they did last time with Chandler. And so we'll see what they do here. I agree with you. If you're going to build Oliveira to be a viable contender, you've got to get him name recognition. You've got to get him more name recognition. I know who he is. You know who he is. But the casual guy on the street doesn't know who the hell Charles Oliveira is, which is a shame because he's an incredibly good fighter. But you got to do that. And it's interesting. Who was it that told him he needed to work on his English? That's why he's not built up. Somebody said that.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I can't remember who said that, but there's something to that.
There is something to that, but then Anderson was able to convince everybody for years that he didn't speak English when he really did.
Well, it kind of helps. Yeah, he Sammy Sosa'd us. It kind of helps, though, that he was destroying everyone in his path in violent, spectacular fashion. That doesn't hurt. Oliveira's got a long way to go for that, Jeff, but we definitely need to this is something that has to happen. We need to see Oliveira on that card. He needs to be in the co-main. He needs to be making that walk and get his hand raised if he wants that title shot. He needs to get his hand raised as the co-main to McGregor and Poirier, not so that he would fight the winner for the title, which could be the case, and that probably would be if Khabib vacated, but so that he gets the name recognition and he gets that signature win over a top opponent besides Tony Ferguson, who was coming off a loss, and you kind of have that, yeah, but it was Tony Ferguson on the downside too soon after a bad loss. You won't have any of that if he's able to get another win over a Gaethje or a Chandler right there before McGregor and Poirier. So they're working on that one for May. It's not a done deal yet. Jones will fight the winner of Stipe and Ngannou. You got a ton of title fights coming up. Jeff, before we wrap it up here, the UFC 258 fight card is tomorrow, and we got Usman and Burns as the main event. What are your final thoughts as we move toward UFC 258, where we'll be streaming live right here on MMA Weekly's YouTube? You won't want to miss it. We'll be coming your way at, 7 Pacific? Yeah, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific with that live stream. Our analysis, our breakdowns during the fights for Usman and Burns for the welterweight title.
Man, I'm just looking forward to the welterweight title being on the line again. And I'm looking forward to this fight finally happening, because I was excited for this fight a year ago, right? And now it's finally happened. It's the wait's been too long. I'm really looking forward to this. But to throw back to the lightweight division before we get out of here, I think that Gaethje and Oliveira should fight, because Chandler's new to the UFC, had such a beautiful debut that I feel like you don't want to ruin him right now, where I feel like we've got a lot of mileage out of Gaethje from World Series of Fighting, right? He's come over, he's had a lot of fights. And so if Gaethje loses to Oliveira, it doesn't hurt the division that much. But if Chandler does right now, it sort of does. So I would put Gaethje in there with Oliveira and do Chandler against somebody else. But that's just me. But now getting back to this weekend's event, yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing how Macy comes back from the loss, how she responds to the knee injury, and that main event, man, title fights, you gotta love them.
Yeah, we'll be on tomorrow night, Jeff and I, UFC 258, can't wait. And then, of course, UFC Fallout, and that is 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific on Sunday. We got a whole bunch of new content and programming coming your way on MMA Weekly. You want to keep it right here. Make sure you subscribe to our channel right here on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell and all those things for notifications as well. Throw your comments up. We enjoy doing this, and the biggest reason why is because we enjoy you, the great fans of mixed martial arts, right here on MMA Weekly, the most trusted source of news and entertainment in MMA for almost 20 years. For Jeff Cain and our entire MMA Weekly team, I want to remind you to stay on the site all weekend, too, for great coverage from Ken and Jeff and Hunter and our whole writing team, as well as YouTube for all the shows and Facebook and IG, MMA Weekly. This has been MMA Weekly's preview show for UFC 258, powered by CBD Emporium, featuring Level Select CBD, 50% off right now. Stay in the fight, MMA.com. Stay in the fight, MMA.com. Stay in the fight, MMA.com. The code is MMA50. Check them out, MMA50. Get 50% off CBD Emporium and Level Select products today with that code on that site. Stay in the fight, MMA.com, and the code MMA50. Level Select CBD. Stay in the fight. From all of us to all of you, thanks for watching. We appreciate you. Gries and Cain, Jim and Jeff, MMA Weekly live right here, even though we're not live today, but most of the time we are. And we're happy to have you with us. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy UFC 258. We'll see you tomorrow.